Principal.
Joseph Halabaka, teacher for 2005.
Trinidad paraprofessional.
Paul Chappie, I'm a resource specialist.
And our wonderful coach, Lily Gibson. We always, at Ortega, like to start with the data. So where are we coming? What does the data tell us that we need to do and where do we need to go? And so what we found looking at our data is we're a pretty diverse campus, but our Asian and white students are 63% proficient on ELA, 85% proficient on math. White students come in at 81 proficient. And then we have this huge gap, which is really alarming. They're African American students at 13% ELA, 17% math. Our English language learners are coming in at 31% proficient. And although we saw huge gains last year, it hasn't been historical that way with the math coming at 56%. So this was a big, what are we going to do? Dr. Matthews shared with us, resurfaced the 30-year trend of the achievement gap in San Francisco Unified. What was it that we were going to do that was going to be different? How are we going to get any other outcomes that would generate any different narrative that hasn't been tried or done before? And so this led us to really thinking about who are our learners, who are our students. And the work of Zaretta Hammond kind of popped in as we've been working with her. And she quotes, "For culturally and linguistically diverse students, their opportunities to develop habits of mind and cognitive capacity are limited or non-existent because of educational inequity. The result is that their cognitive growth is stunted, leaving them dependent learners unable to work to their full potential." This is our education system. The teacher spews, the child receives and doesn't know what to do with it possibly, and then it disappears. But we were really struggling to think about what does learning behavior look like. And so maybe this was our different approach. Maybe really understanding how a student looks when they're learning, when they're going through information processing, when they're going through cognitive routines. This was what's going to be different for us. So it led us to our design challenge, where we developed a theory of action. So if we engage students in frequent cognitive routines, they'll possess a set of explicit learning moves when confronted with new content to support intentional information processing, and then in turn will create positive identities of problem solvers, designers, and critical thinkers, thus increasing agency of their own learning. We want students responsible for their learning to move away from being consumers of knowledge to being producers of knowledge. So some guiding questions we looked at were: how might we learn about moving students from dependent states to independent states? How might we understand and utilize cognitive routines, specifically our African American and linguistically diverse community? And what evidence do we see or hear of African American male students practicing their new learning? What evidence do we see of them making their learning visible? Are they just there passive, or are they active participants in them becoming learners? And so we took this information, this was our guide, into our discovery phase.
Discover phase. So what we intended to do was, we had four steps that we wanted to do. Was number one is student empathy interviews, where we interview students and about their experience in the school and classroom space. Then we wanted to have students carry out those interviews with their classmates and facilitate those questions with them to gather more data on students. And then we want a learning journey, where we visited an old school and see how they work using project-based learning. And then interviewing a child development expert, so as a having looked into the cognitive development or how it's stifled, and we wanted to try to get some ideas behind how we can attack that. And so we were able to carry out two of those four actions. We carried out student empathy interviews, where we, as teachers, we interviewed students and gathered how they felt about the space, what it is that they enjoyed about the space, where did they find their struggles, and where did they find within the classroom space, how did they feel like they were being the most productive. And then we carried out learning journeys, where we visited an alt school and we observed how they were doing personalized learning and project-based learning. Some of the insights we came across were how they were actually doing cross-curriculum. Also how they were learning flexible learning between grades, how they might be proficient at English at 5th grade, however they might be more proficient in math at 6th grade, and seeing how they were able to weave that in their schools.
So based off of our discovery phase, we created 4 insight statements. The first one was around enjoyment of subjects. We found that students do enjoy solving problems and being challenged. And our second insight statement, it was around challenges with subjects. So students found that, we found that students, if they couldn't see the immediate end of our work, that they would become bored, and that they felt like they lacked a voice in the classroom. So were they really being heard? Did they really get to contribute to their learning journey? And our third insight statement was around positive peer-to-peer interactions, and we found that they wanted to hang out with their friends. They do want to communicate with one another. And our fourth insight statement was around they wanted more time with pacing themselves and opportunities to work with their friends and have meaningful and challenging work. We discussed it and we saw that dependent learners at Ortega were usually quiet. They avoided eye contact. Maybe they were distracted or talking during class. They needed a fun environment. They needed that support from the staff members and their peers. They had beliefs that they weren't smart, that school is hard, and comparing themselves to smarter kids in class. And they would say things like, am I doing this right? I don't know what to do. What time is recess? I need help.
So we developed some how might we statements. How might we leverage peer-to-peer positive interactions to facilitate student motivation and engagement? How can we support students' ability to communicate clear academic needs? How can we have the students see the steps needed in the task in order to stay engaged? Is a big one. And how can we help students to self-identify the problems or their challenges instead of us doing that before? So we went to the alt school. Alt school is kind of like this personalized learning paradise, right? They have like super tiny classrooms, anywhere from like 4 to like 20. There's always at least 2 teachers in every classroom. Sometimes there's more. They have virtually unlimited resources to go along with just a few students in each class. But I want to highlight a couple of things. So I put the pictures up here. So we're thinking there's going to be a ton of technology. Kids are going to be like kind of doing whatever, right? There's like a ton of choice. It's called the alternative school, right? So we get there, and there's a lot of choice. And kids are kind of all over doing a bunch of different things at the same time. However, as you can kind of see, they have like these vision boards, and on the vision boards are Common Core standards. So everything that the kids were doing was anchored in Common Core standards, and the kids were able to explain to us what standard they were working on, what standard they were progressing toward, right? So choice bounded by the standards. Kind of giving away some of the insights, but kind of what we were thinking afterwards was kids need goal setting. They need to set their own goals. They need to demonstrate their own learning process in their own language. They need to review and have intimate knowledge of the standards and be able to say them in their own words. They need to have choice, and they need guiding questions that can lead to self-discovery.
So our prototype for all of this was developing an app. And so what we needed was student voice, we need student buy-in, we need students to be able to name and choose their standards, understand where they were going so they could be critical thinkers of it. So this is I'm a student, I get to choose my standard, I'm going to choose writing. Here I have my goal, it's standards in line. They have their cards here that they're passed around the room. They're able to say what I want to reflect on insofar as I can determine my opinion or point of view on a topic or text. I can choose to do a video recording of myself, an audio, or an image. They do an image, they're able to take a picture of it, submit it, and then able to look at it. And so see here. Now what the benefit is, the teacher is able to give immediate feedback. Here, but what the key is to this, it's different than what we've seen out there, is peers are giving feedback. And so it is becoming, the triangle is going from teacher to student, and we're now moving the arrow from student to generate that peer learning. So you can see Mr. C gave feedback on this piece, as well as student Ian gave feedback on this piece. These are all generated from standards from the teacher, who is able to choose those standards with them at Common Core. With their, they got the Common Core state standards, and they identify the goals for the kids, and the kids reflect those goals. Our ask is, we know the app is kind of a hard, the app isn't going to come to fruition right away, but what can come to fruition is technology to support students to be able to give constant critical feedback. So from January to June, we're planning on getting iPads and technology with those iPads so students can start documenting and videotaping their learning based on their goals. In June, we plan to do a 2-day retreat where we're able to hopefully enroll 5 teachers. Right now we have 1 teacher, Mr. Kalabaka, who's going to be rolling this out. We're getting data from his kids. And then in 2019-20, we hope to roll in that 5 cohort and have them consistently. The tech runs to about 9,000 extended calendar for the 3 teachers to plan how this is going to roll out, about 3,000. Experimenting with the off-school platform for this reflection to see if that is a tool we want. They charge 5,000 for it, but printing out our cards for these is about 2,500, and then the June development days for teachers. So our total ask is 24,700 to support students in the coming year.